Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to the Woo Curious podcast. Your map to the mystical, your key to the sacred, and your guide back home to yourself. I'm Eileen, a writer, a spiritual coach, energy healer, and slow living witch. This podcast is your invitation to explore a world where the mundane and the sacred intertwine. It's a haven for those ready to take the first steps into the realms of magic and mystery, providing a safe space for you to embark on your own enchanted journey towards healing and self-discovery. Here, I'll unveil the whispers of the mystical, the rituals often hidden in plain sight, and I'll engage in sacred conversation intended to stir your soul and lead you back into your power. I'm all about demystifying woo and witchcraft. So, whether you're a seasoned seeker or simply woo curious, I'm so delighted you've decided to join me on this journey. Let's make magic. Hello, and welcome back, Woo Crew, to another episode of the Woo Curious podcast. I am your host, Eileen, and I'm here today with a guest that I am so excited to talk with. Katie Bressack is here with me today. Katie is an award-winning holistic nutritionist who specializes in women's hormonal health. With Katie's support, the women she counsels prepare their bodies for pregnancy, increase energy levels, get their periods back on track, and thrive in peri and menopause, along with eating healthier, maintaining a balanced mood. Katie runs a successful one-on-one coaching business and group programs that have helped hundreds of women support their health and hormones. And if you've been with me for the last few weeks, you'll have heard me talking about being on Katie's podcast as well, the Period Besties podcast. And Stasha, her Period Besties partner, was with us on an episode a few weeks back as well. Welcome, Katie. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So, I didn't even give you the heads up before we started. I usually do, but part of what I always like to begin our conversation with on the Woo Curious podcast is an inquiry into how spirituality or maybe the woo has been woven into your life. And for context, I came to this side of life very late. I was an atheist for most of my life. And so it's been a really interesting journey of finding a more spiritual life, dabbling in the woo, being highly skeptical, starting to see science supporting it, and then having it inform a lot of the work I do. So I'm curious if you have your own spiritual journey and if that informs the work that you do now.
That's such an interesting question. I haven't really thought about this in a long time. So I'm excited to kind of go down the journey and remember it all. I always had a interest in religion, spirituality. I just never really felt like something fit. My dad grew up Jewish, but we didn't celebrate any Jewish traditions in my house. My mom grew up Protestant and dabbled in going to temple, dabbled in going to church, did a youth group in high school. And when my grandmother passed away when I was in the fourth grade, I remember waking up and looking out the window, and it was snowing. It's New Hampshire in the end of November. And I remember having this thought, oh, my grandmother died. Nobody had told, I hadn't heard anything overnight. Like I didn't hear the phone ring, like nothing. And I went downstairs and I was like, Grandma died. And my mom looked at me like, oh, you must have heard us talking last night. I was like, no, I just woke up. I just had this feeling. And I didn't really think about that as being spiritually connected, right? I was in fourth grade. I think, what, are you 10 or 11? I don't even remember how old.
Something like that.
And then in college, I took this really incredible class called Women in Spirituality. And it was a class all about how religion was based around women and the goddesses and Native Americanism, like all of the different kind of spiritual, oh God, I'm trying to think of like the right word. Like, when people were kind of like starting out, like they prayed to women, right? Like we give birth, like we are goddesses, right? All of us are. So I remember taking this class and there was a woman in there who talked about how she could see things before they actually happened. And there was other women in there that kind of had similar experiences that I had when I was younger. And I only had that one experience at that point. And I think I got nervous or scared, kind of like turned it off, never really thought about it in terms of being spiritually connected. And then when I was going through my own fertility journey, I remember my best friend was like, you have to talk to this woman that I work with. And I don't really know what her exact title is, but she can see things. But I don't know
Right.
what she calls herself. Like, I don't want to like say the wrong thing because I know it's a spiritual connector, or she's not really a medium. But I remember sitting there,
An intuitive or a clairvoyant,
healer, yeah,
something
like
like that.
something. I
Yeah.
don't know exactly what she calls herself, so I don't want to misspeak for her. But I remember I was like, okay, Megan, like I'll go. My best friend, she's also OT, pelvic floor person. Like, so she's really
Mm.
into womb and spirituality. And she and I are like the only ones of our friends that like really, really connect about this a lot when we talk. But I was like, okay, I'll try anything. So I sat down and this woman was like, and I had a few miscarriages ahead of this time. And I was kind of at this, like, if I don't have kids now, because I was 40, I'm like, I'm never going to have kids. And so we went, and I sat there and she was like, I see this little boy like sitting here, like waiting for you. And I was like, what do you mean waiting? I'm waiting. I'm ready. And I ended up getting pregnant that month.
Wow.
She saw all these other things and we had these like really deep conversations, and she took a photo of me. And in this photo, there's a rainbow beam like over my head.
Hmm.
And I look at that photo often. I was like, yeah, like there is like this spiritual connection. And then I remember, and I know I'm talking in circles, but then I remember years later actually signing up for this group call with a medium, this woman that I had known in LA. And each one of us had a different turn. And I was hoping like my grandmother would come through. At this point, both of my grandmothers have passed. I was wondering maybe like a cousin would come through. And it was actually, because I had a few miscarriages, it was actually one of the babies that had miscarried, and they had come through and they were like talking to the medium, and that they had wanted to bring two babies to kind of make up for not staying the two
Huh.
that I miscarried. And I
Yeah.
remember being like, oh my God, you know what I mean? Like just
Yeah.
all these feelings, and then taking time to go back and think, oh, okay, like why did I, and also it was the 80s in New Hampshire, right? Like nobody was really, when I first had that first kind of premonition, like nobody was
Yeah.
really talking about that. And like my parents didn't really know how to respond to that. But I think about
Yeah.
the little girl often and how connected she was to kind of what was happening, not just in her world, but like other worlds, right? And thinking about like my spirituality and all these small little miracles that I can look back now and say miracles that I've witnessed and felt. And like one more story and then I'll
Yeah.
pause. But I also have this weird thing where I know my friends are pregnant.
Mm.
So like it's happened to me multiple times, or even when I was working in corporate and I would like just know like somebody was pregnant, and I have tried to maintain it, but like I'm so excited when I see them because I like know that they're like pregnant without them like
Yeah.
telling me anything. So I feel like I just had dinner with a friend a few weeks ago and she was just sitting there and I was like, oh my God, like she's so pregnant. And then I was just like waiting for her to tell me. But I wonder too, like this has happened to me since my late 20s. So that's also something like interesting that I don't necessarily know what that means, but it means to me that I'm like connected spiritually in some way. I don't see things, like I don't know things, but like I can feel the energy. And my friend was like, do I look pregnant? I was like, no. Like she was maybe like 10 weeks. I'm like, you don't look pregnant
Yeah.
at all. Like I could just feel that you were pregnant.
Yeah.
So long-winded answer to your question, but I had to kind of go back and think about all these different things that come into play, because I don't really
Yeah.
feel religious, but I feel like there's something out there, wherever there is,
Yeah.
watching over me and guiding me. And I feel very connected to people that I have lost in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I love hearing the stories because so often, so many of us have had experiences when we were young before, we were told that those types of experiences were crazy, whether or not we were told overtly or just, we picked it up from kind of the cultural overtones of like, that's out there, that's woo. Like the word woo used to be really like a bad thing. Like you did not want to get called woo. My dad was trying to explain what I do to some of his friends, and he was like, I don't know, some like woo stuff, and they thought he was insulting me. And he's like, no, that's the word she uses. But so many of us were and are connected in, tapped in to that interconnectedness that exists in the energetic field, and the fact that we're not individual beings here on earth. We are very much multi-species. Even in our own bodies, we think about all of our microbes and stuff that are inextricably part of us, and then on that larger level, that like connection to a collective consciousness of some sort. And so many of us stuff it down, but it's really neat when we start to follow the thread back
Mhm.
and see where it leads, and notice where we actually were tuned in or tapped into something, whatever that something might be. And I'm curious if does it inform the work that you do? Like, it's interesting that for you, one of the ways you're connected is through that, like, oh, you're pregnant. And the work that you do is with women, a lot of whom are trying to conceive, and in that creative womb space. So it may not, but I'm curious if that kind of comes into play in your work.
I feel like it comes into play a lot in my work in terms of just like energetically, like I can really, before somebody shares something with me, sometimes, not all the time, I can like feel what they're experiencing, like what they're feeling. Like there's just like some energy. And like most of my work is on a phone or FaceTime, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
Zoom. So it's not like I'm in the same room with them, but I can definitely, even when someone tells me they're pregnant, I have like an instant image if it's a boy or a girl or whatever, like it just
Mm-hmm.
those things. But I feel like in terms of preconception, a lot of what I share is being connected. Like there's a book, I don't know if you read it, Spirit Babies.
I've heard of it. I
Yeah.
haven't read it, but I know
But
it.
it's
Yeah.
really about like connecting to your spirit baby and like,
Mm-hmm.
energy and different things. So I talk a lot about like things that are not necessarily nutrition based.
Right.
Right, like, because I think it's when we think about, and as now that I have children, they're going to be 5 next week, which is crazy. But I've had that experience myself in terms of like longing and wanting and like doing that and doing all these different kind of like woo woo things
Mhm, mhm.
helped me kind of be open and ready for my children. And I know that's not
Yeah.
everybody's journey, but like some of the women that I've worked with are doing IVF and, doing lots of things. And I'm like, okay, let's work on your diet, your lifestyle, like work with your doctor, but let's also really take time to connect. Like, are you open to receiving? How are you receiving?
Yeah.
How are you kind of letting them know that you're ready?
Mhm.
And it's not for everybody, obviously, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I can kind of tell when my clients are more open versus ones that are not, which is okay. You don't have to be, but it kind of sometimes can take on like a deeper meaning, especially when you've been going through IUI or IVF and doing fertility things. It's like, okay, like that's a lot of work. It's really hard in your body.
Yeah.
So just finding different ways to kind of feel connected and open, because that can really drag you down and like make you so
Mhm.
exhausted and so disconnected from your body because you're just,
Mhm.
it's so medical.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and like now that I have kids, I'm just like, oh my God, like my mom was always like, it's such a miracle. And I was like, yeah, whatever. And then like having my kids, I'm like, oh my God, this actually is a miracle. I have identical boys. I'm like, this is beyond anything I can comprehend, like
Yeah.
when you think about it. But I think personally, I was very disconnected from my
Mm-hmm.
body until I kind of did more of this womb work to be really more connected and like open and receiving of
Mm-hmm.
it. Not to say it wasn't hard. It was very challenging. It was a long, long 7 years,
Mm-hmm.
but it definitely, I do think things really started to shift and change when I was a little bit more open.
Yeah. Well, and so often, I think what you're speaking to is that, it's whole human when we're thinking about any kind of health journey. Yes, the tests are great. Yes, the technology is great. Yes, sometimes we need all of those things. And we are not just like parts. And so often I think that in the medical world, we get reduced down to our parts. Well, your eggs are good and you're ovulating and your partner's sperm is functional. So, like, what? Like, there must be something wrong. Or we have all of these like individual parts that should be working, or maybe not. Maybe there's some need for help there, but it forgets the whole picture. And so much of what we struggle with in our current society and the way that we are functioning is this dissociation from our bodies. We feel like we aren't able to connect in with that inner wisdom or trust it or even hear it so often. And often, what's happening on a lot of health journeys is that we're subconsciously blocking wellness or wholeness,
Mhm.
whatever that might be. And that it's not to lay the blame at the feet of anybody experiencing fertility issues, because that's obviously not what we're here to do. But there is this sense that sometimes what is needed is that deeper connection. We forget that we are not just mental bodies or physical parts, but that there's those other energetic levels of the spiritual connection.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned doing some more kind of woo things for your womb as part of your journey. Do you want to share some of what you
Yeah,
explored?
I I will. And I started with abdominal massage. And I know that doesn't sound like
Mhm.
super wooey, but like for some people it is, right? Like
Mhm.
our bellies, right, hold so much wisdom, like so many stories. Like that's just our womb, right? That's just our
Mhm.
healing place. And it's sensitive. Like when people touch your belly, it's like a sensitive, deep connection work.
Yeah.
So I remember starting there, and I wasn't having any like cramps or like my periods were regular. It was more just like this. It was my naturopath actually suggested it as a way of kind of getting my body and my mind like more connected. So I did that for a
Mhm.
while. I ended up doing pelvic floor PT
Mhm.
because, and I don't know if I would say that's womb work, like wooey, but it's womb work, like
Yeah.
so often, especially in my life, like I hold all my stress in my pelvic floor. Like
Mhm.
that's just where it goes. And it was just really tight, and
Mhm.
they were just like opening to receiving, and I was having some back issues and some other things going on. So I did a lot of that. And then I ended up going to this intuitive body work. So it was an intuitive who was also doing like body work
Right.
and a lot of Reiki, but like lots of like kind of mobility work as well, and kind of going from
Mhm.
head to my feet and really loosening up some areas that she felt like were blocking the
Right.
energy. And interestingly enough, she kept seeing a boy too
Hmm.
every time I was doing the body work. And then I also did some, oh my goodness, myofascia.
Myofascial release, or
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, I did that
Yeah.
as well too because I had some like scar tissue. Like nobody said I had scar tissue, but after a miscarriage, I had a DNC and I was not
Right.
pregnant after. I was like not. And my best friend Megan was like, I think you need some myofascial release. There's got to be something
Something
wrong.
going on there. Yeah.
So I kind of did all of these things around the same time. So I'm like, I don't know what worked or didn't work, but the woman, she was incredible. She moved right after the boys were born, but she was able to identify where that scar was and released it. And I got pregnant
Hmm.
that month. So I did all these things kind of like simultaneously, but a lot of it was just like, it was very uncomfortable at first, right? Because it's awkward. Like that's not
Yeah.
necessarily like an area of your body that people kind of enter and work on,
Yeah. Yeah.
like to put it bluntly. But it's so sacred and it holds so
Mhm.
much. And it was interesting because I kept telling my doctor, I'm like, I got pregnant and now after this DNC, like I cannot get pregnant. Like there has to
Mhm.
be something going on. And then they did a ton of like tests, like the HCG test, all these tests. And they were like, nothing's there, nothing's blocking it. And like, there's something. And I know you can get scar tissue from a DNC. I'm like, that's the
Yeah.
only thing that like makes logical sense to me. So that's why I kind of was working externally and then internally, and then with these intuitive healers and the one in LA and then the one in Massachusetts with the rainbow picture I mentioned before. So
Right.
I kind of just was like, throw everything to the wall. I'm going to try everything, see what
Something gonna stick.
someone's
Yeah.
going to work. I was working with a fertility doctor at the same time because I was like, what is kind of going on? I know I'm older. I know I'm 40 and I got pregnant when I was in my late 30s. So I know it's a little bit kind of like quote unquote easier, but I'm like, this just
Mhm.
makes sense to me. Like there's something going on.
Mhm.
And I was also having pain with sex because of the DNC. Like it happened right
Right.
after the DNC. So there was a lot of probably trauma,
Yeah.
right? And then
Yeah.
also scar tissue. So I was just trying to kind of figure out how to release it. And I did. And then I had identical twins. Like it's kind of nuts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not the best
And
way, but it's like when I retell the story and I'm sure I'm missing parts of it, I'm just like, what? This is
mhm.
my life for so long. It was exhausting, but I also was just like, I felt like my body could do this.
Right. Yeah, well, and you had some proof that it could. And then I think what's really kind of sticking out about your story to me is the medical system, the doctors being like, there's nothing wrong, there's nothing wrong. And this discounting of different ways of knowing and the inner wisdom again that happens, and then women especially in that medical model and system get gaslit, get told that their issues are not issues, that it's all in our heads, and they get dismissed, they live in more pain. All of the stats we have are abhorrent about women's health and the way that it's handled in the medical system. So just kind of, I wanted to just note that there, because I'm sure there are listeners who are like, oh yeah, that feeling of being told nothing's wrong and knowing something's wrong is so resonant.
Well, because I was like talking to my doctor and she's like, you just have a glass of wine before you have sex. I'm like, that's not the problem. Yeah, my body is tensing up because of the medical procedure. I'm sure it's just foreign cold
It's invasive. It's
invasive.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's not pleasant. It's painful and invasive.
well, I got
That's
that part of it, but I was like, I just think we're missing something. So it kind of set me
Mhm.
on this like journey of exploration because I was like, well, I'm into the woo stuff. So let me see if this woo stuff is going to help me.
Mhm. And I think it's that being open to, well, as long as you're seeing practitioners who are in their like ethical spaces, like it's not going to harm anything at the very least for the most part. And it is interesting, there's so many kind of layers here, but you've mentioned the word receive a few times, and I wanted to circle back to that because it was kind of flagging this thing that comes up for so many women in so many areas of life, and not just open to receive a baby, open to receive pleasure, open to receive support and care. So many women are really good at giving
Mhm.
and holding space for others, and giving of themselves and their time and their energy, but are really uncomfortable with receiving. And I don't know if you have anything you want to speak to around that kind of idea or that sense, or what maybe shifted for you in order for you to be able to open to receive your twins.
That's a really good observation. I think that it's gotten easier as I've gotten older.
Mhm.
One, I don't want to do this by myself. Like, I don't want to do anything by myself. Like, if you want to help me, I'll take all the help I can get. When I was younger, I felt like I had to really prove myself. And I still feel that way sometimes with certain things that I'm doing. But I think as I've gotten older, I've softened to the fact that like it's okay to have support, whether it's from a community, your partner, your friends. And I've always been the one that's helping everybody else. So I'm like, why can't I just receive this and accept this myself? So I think that was a really turning point. I feel like that starts happening in like your 30s at some point, right? Like
Yeah.
like tired, you're like, all right, give me all the help. Like I want to do this more by myself. But I think in terms of receiving, I feel as if a lot of times it's just like a mental block. I feel like I was brought up to be really independent and
Mhm.
do everything like myself. And I
Mhm.
still get my mom who is in that mode because that's who she is. Like she's in her 70s and she's helpful and she takes care of everybody else. And I think at some point in my life I was like, I love my mom. I don't want to end up like my mom being the caretaker for everybody.
Mhm.
And I was just kind of more open to receiving. And in terms of fertility, I feel like I was kind of like at this, I was like, I don't know if I'm been blocking anything, but like the opposite of block is open, open, receive. So I kind of was just like, okay, I'll just be open to whatever it looks like, whether we have kids, whether we don't have kids. I don't know if I ever got to that point where I was going to be okay if I didn't have kids, but I was
Mhm.
like open to those conversations my husband and I were having about like we have a
Right.
great life, like we can do these things, like we're not, like we want
Yeah.
this, but we're open to this, or we want this, and we just kind of had like difficult conversations with a therapist and like kind of
Yeah.
figuring that stuff out.
Almost a surrender to, surrender and acceptance are 2 very different things,
Yes.
right? Like, you can surrender to, well, and I guess surrender, acceptance, and then, like, stagnancy are very different things because you can surrender to and accept what is and still do the things to try to, move towards a desire or an outcome. And yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, and I see this all the time with women, with my clients, because we're like, I can do this. We are so determined. So I feel like I almost had like
Mhm.
blockers on too, because I was like, this is going to work. And
Right.
then when I, like you mentioned, like kind of surrendered and like was more open and like, okay, like let's do the deep trauma kind of work here, then I think my body was open to like receiving. But like for so long, and I see this with so many of my clients, especially my clients that have done IVF and like all the things were just like,
Mhm.
this will happen. Like this is going to happen because we are amazing at our careers. We've done all these things. We've run triathlons. The list goes on and on, right? We like
Yeah.
are determined beings. So then
Yeah.
when this is not quote unquote working, we just put our heads down and push through. So I was just
Mhm.
like, okay, like the pushing's not working. Like I
Mhm.
can do these things with a doctor, I can do these things with my own health, but something needed to like shift.
And I wonder, so this is sparking something that can't comes up for a lot of women in labor. As a former midwife, I was able to be with women in those spaces, and pregnancy, the journey itself is about surrender. You do not have control the way we feel like we do in so many other aspects of life. You cannot control anything about pregnancy. You can eat the right quote unquote foods and do the right exercises and everything. At the end of the day, you're almost a passenger along for that ride. And especially in labor, it's the women who are okay with surrendering and being in that place, because surrender is so vulnerable. It feels really scary, but it's the women who can surrender that are most easily able to navigate labor and birth, whatever that might look
Mhm.
like. And it's the ones who are clinging to a certain way it should look or feel or be that tend to have the most difficult journeys through labor and postpartum as well, right? Having a kiddo again. You're not in control.
Oh my God, so true. I mean, as soon as I found out I was pregnant, I was like sick. Like I threw up for like almost 7.5 months. Like I was so
Oh,
sick. Twins, apparently it's like triple the hormones.
yeah.
So I was just like feeling it. And I mean, I was pregnant. Like it's interesting because the day that I had the boys, I had only gained like about 30 pounds, but like, because I had been so sick, which
Mhm.
twins usually gain more than that, but like I was all
Mhm.
belly, like my boobs and my belly were connected. Like it was just like this
Yeah.
whole thing. My ankles were like, but I had been working out, walking, like I was doing all the things. But yeah, I think like that was one thing that I really learned. Like as soon as I was pregnant, I was like, yep, I'm not in control anymore.
Yeah.
And then I think in terms of receiving, postpartum was when I was really tuned into like whoever is going to take care of me,
Mm.
just do it. Like my
Yeah.
husband fed me all day, like kept giving me water. And we had the boys during COVID. So my parents were originally supposed to come and help and they couldn't get out there. So we
Right.
hired a night nurse, thank God. And we were like, oh my God, it's COVID. Like, what do we do? I'm like, somebody has to be here. Like, I
Yeah.
need
With 2?
rest.
Oh my gosh.
I need to heal. I cannot be getting up. Like, I just I was very nervous about postpartum, just in general. I didn't know how I was going to feel and respond and be. And
Mhm.
think because I had that support initially and that I didn't feel like myself for like good 5 or 6 weeks from like just the medication because I was in a lot of
Right.
pain postpartum. I had a C-section,
Yeah.
and it was horrible. Like everyone else I've talked
Mm.
to, they're like, maybe that's like a twin thing, but like I could not put my arms up. Like I could not get on and
Oh,
off the toilet. Like I couldn't take a shower by myself. I just had to like surrender and receive and let people feed me and take care of me so that I could like kind of wake up from this
yeah.
weird dreamy state. I remember one day I woke up and I was like, oh, have I been here for the past 5 weeks? Like, I don't know if my
Right.
brain has been here. I've been doing all the things, going through the emotions. But yeah, I think postpartum really taught me
Yeah.
how to just
And
because you can't fight with that. It's like I couldn't move. So yeah, like bring me the water, bring me the food, take care of
yeah.
me. Like just do it.
It's interesting because my brain is wondering, and then there's never gonna be an answer, but this curiosity of, oh, did you need to learn some of that opening and receiving lesson before getting pregnant so that you could ask for the support you needed in the postpartum? Was there that kind of plan of, well, she's gonna have 2, and that's gonna be extra hard, and so
Yeah. So in a weird way, it was kind of good that my parents weren't there because I think it would have been a lot for them.
Mhm.
So obviously it was sad they weren't there and like they couldn't meet the babies right away. But I think we had this COVID bubble and we could just kind of like lock in and just do what we needed to do to kind of create this bond and relationship. And like it was
Yeah.
chill because we couldn't go anywhere. I was in LA.
Yeah, one of the things I noticed about early COVID for my clients at the time was that, like, even though it was hard because there was more isolation and fewer people could come to help out, there wasn't that sense that so many new moms have of missing out
Mhm.
on things or feeling like they should be getting out more and going and doing, and like they couldn't. And so it was off the table. And so there was like this permission to really cocoon and just be with their baby and in the mess of it all. And their partners were home for the most part from work, maybe working at home, but more present than they usually would be. So just one of those like really beautiful threads that came out of a situation that overall was quite awful for many. But there was these glimmers of like remembering how perhaps we might be.
Well, I remember when things started opening up again and we were excited, but then like, oh my God, like we have to like go out. Like we're gonna do this. It was in a weird way because I'm a very social, extroverted person. I learned that I was also enjoying being a little like more homey and
Mm-hmm.
but then like I had been wearing my bathrobe every day. I was like, okay, Katie, it's time to put some pants on or something, It was just
Yeah.
one of those things. But I look back and I'm like, we're just as busy as we were pre-COVID now. I'm like, what lessons? I don't know. It's weird because it was like 5 years ago almost for the boys. Not it's already
Yeah.
been 5 years for COVID, but I'm just like, how have we gone right back? I don't know. I think about that often. How did we,
Yeah.
society, learn anything? Or
Did we not? Did we? That's the entire foundation of my work too, is helping women rest and come back into those still places. We were having a conversation just this morning inside my community of feeling behind and wanting to slow down, but not feeling like that's productive. And just like this narrative comes over and over and over. So it's all part of it. And I think it's really tied to the work that you do as well with women when we're thinking about healing our hormones or getting in touch with our bodies and our cycles in order to live more in sync or to get pregnant or to navigate menopause, perimenopause with more grace. It's all connected, right? It's all connected and it requires that kind of slow down, tune in,
Mhm.
reconnect space. I'm curious if you, because I know you work with women at various stages of your life, is there a specific part of a woman's journey that you particularly love to spend time with women in? Like, is it that pre-pregnancy? Is it perimenopause? Is it?
Oh my goodness, that's a hard question because I love all the different stages. I feel like they're all beautiful, like hormonal life transitions. And it's really,
Mhm.
as we're talking though, I feel like that postpartum, when I'm working with women, whether preparing or if they're pregnant, I always spend a lot of time with them preparing for postpartum and then working with
Mm.
women that come to me postpartum. I feel
Mhm.
like watching my clients go through it, then me going through it, like just getting that support. I am so adamant when I'm working with them about like, okay, we need a plan. I know it
Yeah.
feels far away, but it's coming soon regardless because it's
Yeah.
coming sooner than you think. We need a plan, either a meal train or we're going to make a lot of meals. We're going to have meal delivery service. We need to make sure you have a pelvic floor therapist that you
Yeah.
can see. We need to make sure that like not need to, but let's make sure that you have, someone on speed dial for helping with breastfeeding, really
Mhm.
having a plan. Cause I feel like as women, when we have, not that we have to follow the plan step by step, but when we can see things laid out in support, we know we
Mhm.
have options.
Mhm.
And I just feel like the more options that we have and that we kind of make those connections when we're in a different headspace, when we're really feeling like we need the support, we're more apt to reach out to them because we've made that
Right.
connection and we feel like, yes, this person can help me and I don't have to introduce myself in this time when I don't feel my best. It's still okay to do that.
Right.
But I just feel like having that plan or even just like, what do I bring to the hospital? Okay, you don't need all these things, but bring these things,
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
feel like that preparation, because we tend to spend so much time, even like registries, right? It's all for the baby. Like,
Mhm.
I'm like, these are some things you can put in the registry for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's very much, and it's in my experience too, people prepare for so long for the birth.
Hmm.
And like the birth is going to happen and prepare, yes, but the birth is going to happen whether or not you're prepared. However, breastfeeding might not. And so it's really people kind of stop at like baby's here. I've done all the work, but they forget about the fact that the longest trimester, even though I guess the fourth trimester, as it's often referred to, is the longest, and it's that postpartum period. But how do women usually find you or connect with you? How do women work with you?
Yeah. So you can find me anywhere, Katie Bressack. So Instagram, I kind of hang out there the most. My website, but I usually work with women one on one for either 3 or 6 months or longer. I have a group program, an online eating for your hormones. If you're just like curious and want to just start eating in a way that works to support your hormones, you can do that by yourself. If you sign up for my newsletter, you'll get like a fun recipe book with like chocolate dessert recipes that are healthy and yummy, and just like a quick little guide on what to start supporting and doing to support your hormones. So would love to have you join. And like you mentioned earlier, Stasha and I have the podcast Period Besties. We're just looking for some candid conversations and lots of good information on all different areas of your life in terms of hormones and where you're at. Come and hang out.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. And of course, all the links for all of those ways to connect will be below. Some of our listeners may even have listened into the episode of Period Besties that I was on at this stage. It was linked back on March 24th. Look at me go in the past as we record this now. And yeah, please reach out. Katie is a wealth of knowledge and just such a warm presence. And we all deserve a little bit of TLC when it comes to our hormones and our fertility and our menopause journeys and all of that. There's so much misinformation out there. So having a wise sage in your corner is always worthwhile.
Yeah, I agree with you because I think rest is underrated. And I love that you brought that up multiple times. So anyone that's listening, like rest is not sleep, but it's just as important.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here with me today, Katie, and for sharing all of your beautiful stories and your wisdom.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for tuning in, Woo Crew. As always, if you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating, a review. If you're watching on YouTube, like, subscribe, comment, all of those things, and share with your friends. And we'll see you back here this time next week. Bye for now.